Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched her world burn. Through the massive viewing window, she could see the planet New Geneva below. It was a beautiful world with blue oceans and green forests. 3 million humans called it home. They had built cities there. They had raised families. They had believed they were safe. They were wrong. The Vectari swarm filled the space around her ship like a cloud of death. There were thousands of them. Each enemy vessel looked like a twisted insect made of black metal. They moved together in perfect harmony, controlled by a single hive mind that felt no mercy and knew no fear. "Admiral," said Commander Torres, his voice shaking, "we are counting over 8,000 enemy ships. Intelligence said there would be 500. Yuki did not look away from the window. Her face was calm, but inside her heart was breaking. She had commanded the human fleet for 15 years. She had won battles that seemed impossible, but this was different. This was the end. "How many ships do we have?" she asked. 47 combat ready, another 12 with heavy damage, 59 ships against 8,000. The math was simple and cruel. The war against the Vectari had lasted 12 years. 12 years of blood and fire and death. The insectoid aliens had appeared from the dark spaces between stars with a simple message for humanity: die. They did not want peace. They did not want resources or territory. They wanted only one thing. They wanted every human being dead. To the Vectari hive mind, all species that were not part of the collective were like disease. They had to be cleaned away. "The colony is beginning evacuation," Torres reported. "But the transport ships are too slow. They will never escape in time." Yuki finally turned to face her bridge crew. These men and women had served with her through the darkest days of the war. They had watched friends die. They had seen worlds burn, and still they stood at their stations, ready to fight. "Then we give them time," she said. "All ships, form defensive line. We hold here until the last transport is away." She knew what she was asking. She was asking them to die. No one argued. No one ran. They simply nodded and went to work. The battle began with fire and silence. In space, there is no sound. Explosions bloom like flowers and fade into nothing. Ships die without screaming. It makes war feel like a dream, beautiful and terrible at the same time. The Defiance shook as the first enemy weapons struck her shields. Yuki grabbed the railing to steady herself. Around her, crew members shouted numbers and damage reports. "Shields at 80%. The Valiant is taking heavy fire. We lost the Horizon. She's gone." Yuki watched the tactical display as green dots disappeared one by one. Each green dot was a ship. Each ship held hundreds of her people. And the red dots, the enemy ships, seemed endless. The Vectari fought without fear because they did not think as individuals. Each ship was controlled by a small piece of the greater hive mind. When one ship died, the hive simply redirected its attention to another. There was no grief. There was no hesitation. There was only the cold purpose of extermination. "Admiral," Torres pointed at the display. "They are breaking through on the left side. They are heading for the transports." Yuki made a decision in half a second. "Take us into the gap. All forward weapons, continuous fire." The Defiance turned and dove into the swarm. She was the largest ship in the human fleet, a dreadnought built for exactly this kind of desperate battle. Her weapons blazed in all directions, cutting through enemy ships like a knife through paper. But there were too many. For every Vectari ship she destroyed, 10 more took its place. They swarmed around her like insects around a dying animal. Her shields began to fail. Her hull began to crack. "Admiral," Torres said quietly, "we cannot hold much longer." Yuki looked at the transport ships on her display. Most of them had escaped. Most, but not all. There were still 3 transports trying to reach the jump point. 3 transports carrying almost 100,000 people. "We hold," she said. "Until those ships are safe, we hold." The next hour was the longest of her life. The Defiance fought with everything she had. Her crew performed miracles, rerouting power, sealing breaches, keeping the old ship alive through sheer determination. One by one, the other human ships fell. The Valiant, the Resolute, the Dawn's Light. Great ships with proud histories, reduced to burning wreckage. Finally, Torres spoke the words she had been waiting for. "Last transport is away. They made the jump." Yuki closed her eyes for just a moment. 100,000 lives. That was what her fleet had bought with their deaths. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. All remaining ships, Retreat. Fall back to the rally point. Only 4 ships followed her order. Only 4 ships remained from a fleet of 59. As the Defiance limped away, Yuki looked back at New Geneva one last time. The Vectari had already begun their work. Their ships were descending to the surface like a plague of locusts. Within hours, 3 million people would be dead. She turned away and did not look back again. Far across the galaxy, on a dead moon called Kithros 4, a man named Marcus Chen was digging in the dirt. Dr. Chen was a xenoarchaeologist. That meant he studied the remains of alien civilizations. For 30 years, he had traveled from world to world, searching for clues about the species that had lived and died long before humans reached the stars. Most people thought his work was useless. The war against the Vectari had consumed everything. All resources went to building ships and weapons. No one cared about ancient ruins and dead aliens, but Marcus kept digging. He believed that the past held secrets that could save the future. He had no evidence for this belief. He simply felt it in his bones. Kithros 4 was a gray and lifeless place. The moon had no air, no water, no life. But long ago, something had built structures here. Marcus had found the entrance to an underground chamber 3 months ago. Since then, he and his small team had been slowly excavating their way inside. "Dr. Chen," said his assistant, a young woman named Sarah, "I think we found something." Marcus climbed down into the pit and looked at what Sarah had uncovered. His heart stopped. It was a wall covered in symbols. But these were not like any symbols he had seen before. They were not the geometric patterns of the Kaleen or the flowing scripts of the Malori. These symbols seemed to move when he looked at them. They seemed to change. "What language is this?" Sarah asked. "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "But look at these readings." He showed her his scanner. "These markings are old, Sarah. Very old." "How old?" Marcus swallowed. "The carbon dating says they are over 4 billion years old." Sarah laughed. "That's impossible. There was no intelligent life 4 billion years ago. The universe was barely formed." "I know," Marcus said. "And yet, here they are." He reached out and touched the wall. The moment his fingers made contact, the symbols began to glow with a soft blue light. Marcus jumped back in surprise. Words appeared in his mind. Not sounds, but pure meaning, transmitted directly into his thoughts. "We are the architects. We were here before the stars. We will be here after the stars die. If you are reading this, then you have grown enough to find us. And if you have found us, then perhaps you are ready to call us." The glow faded. The symbols went dark. Marcus stood in the pit, shaking. "Dr. Chen?" Sarah looked worried. "What happened? What did you see?" Marcus did not answer immediately. He was thinking about the war, about the billions of humans who had died, about the billions more who would die if the Vectari were not stopped. "Sarah," he said finally, "contact Earth. Tell them I have found something. Tell them I may have found our only hope. On Earth, in a bunker deep beneath the city of Geneva, the United Council met to discuss the end of humanity. The chamber was cold and gray. 12 people sat around a circular table. They represented the last remains of human government. Behind them, holographic displays showed the status of the war. The displays showed mostly red. Red meant lost. Red meant dead. "New Geneva has fallen," reported General Morrison, a tired old man with white hair and hollow eyes. "We estimate 3 million casualties. Admiral Tanaka is returning with 4 ships. 4 ships, whispered Counselor Zhang. "We sent her with 59. The Vectari fleet is advancing toward the inner colonies," Morrison continued. "At their current speed, they will reach Earth in approximately 6 months. What forces do we have to stop them?" asked Counselor Okonkwo. Morrison looked at his notes. He did not want to say the words out loud, but he had no choice. "We have 23 operational warships. Another 15 can be repaired in time. The Vectari have over 15,000 ships in their main fleet, with more arriving every day." Silence fell over the chamber. The math was clear. 38 ships against 15,000. It was not a battle. It was an execution. "There must be something we can do," Counselor Zhang said. "Some weapon we haven't tried. Some alliance we haven't made." "We have tried everything," Morrison replied. "We have used every weapon we have. We have begged every species we know for help. No one will stand against the Vectari. They are too afraid. Counselor Okonkwo stood up slowly. She was the oldest member of the council, a woman who had seen the best and worst of human nature over her 90 years of life. Then let us speak plainly, she said. We are going to lose this war. Our species is going to be destroyed. The only question now is how we face our end. No one argued with her. No one could. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. They discussed evacuation plans. They discussed surrender terms, even though they knew the Vectari would never accept them. They discussed sending colony ships to distant galaxies, hoping that some small group of humans might escape and start again. It was all useless. They knew it was useless. But they had to do something. They had to try. When the meeting ended, Counselor Okonkwo walked alone through the empty corridors of the bunker. She had been born during a time of peace. She had believed that humanity's future among the stars was bright and limitless. Now she would watch her species die. She stopped at a window that looked out over the underground city. Thousands of people moved through the streets below. Families, children, workers, all of them going about their lives, trying to pretend that the end was not coming. Her communicator buzzed. She answered it without much interest. "Counselor," said a voice she did not recognize. "My name is Dr. Marcus Chen. I am a xenoarchaeologist working on Kethros IV. I need to speak with the council immediately. Dr. Chen, this is not a good time. The council is dealing with urgent matters. I know. The war. The Vectari. That is exactly why I am calling." There was something in his voice, something that made her stop and listen. "Counselor, I have found something. Something old. Something powerful. I believe it may be our only chance." "What did you find?" There was a pause. "I found a message," Marcus said. "A message from beings who existed before the stars. They call themselves the Architects. And I think they left us a way to call them for help." Counselor Okonkwo leaned against the wall. She had heard many desperate claims since the war began. People who said they had found miracle weapons. People who said they could talk to the Vectari and make peace. All of them had been wrong. But something in Marcus Chen's voice was different. He did not sound desperate. He sounded afraid. And somehow, that made her believe him. "Dr. Chen," she said, "tell me everything." 3 days later, Admiral Yuki Tanaka arrived at Earth with her 4 remaining ships. She had lost 55 vessels and over 40,000 crew members in the battle for New Geneva. She had failed to save 3 million colonists. She expected to be dismissed, court-martialed, maybe even executed. Instead, she was summoned to the council chamber for a secret meeting. She walked into the room expecting to face judgment. Instead, she found hope. Marcus Chen was there, along with Counselor Okonkwo and General Morrison. They showed her images of the ancient chamber. They played recordings of the message the architects had left behind. "You want me to believe," Yuki said slowly, "that there are beings older than the stars, and that they left us a way to contact them, and that they might help us fight the Vectari." "I know how it sounds," Marcus admitted. "I didn't believe it myself at first, but the evidence is real. The chamber is real. The message is real. Even if it is real, why would these architects help us? What do they care about humanity?" Marcus had no answer for that. None of them did. General Morrison spoke up. "Admiral, I have been a soldier for 40 years. I have never believed in miracles, but I have also never faced a war we could not win." He looked at the holographic display showing the Vectari fleet. "We have 6 months before they reach Earth. We cannot beat them with ships and weapons. We need something else. Something beyond our understanding." Yuki thought about the battle above New Geneva. She thought about the faces of her crew as they fought and died. She thought about the 3 million people she could not save. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "We need you to protect Dr. Chen," Counselor Okonkwo said. "He believes he can find more information about the architects. There may be a way to actually contact them. But the Vectari are hunting for him. They have heard about his discovery. And they are afraid." "The Vectari are afraid?" "Of what?" "Of the architects," Marcus said. "I have been studying their communications. The word architect appears in their oldest records. They consider them to be gods. Gods they never want to see wake up." Yuki looked at the display again. 15,000 enemy ships, 6 months until the end, and one strange hope buried in ancient ruins. She made her decision. "I will protect Dr. Chen," she said. I will give him whatever time he needs. And if these architects are real, I will find a way to make them listen. She did not know if it would work. She did not know if anything could save humanity now. But she knew one thing for certain. She was done running. She was done watching her people die. If this was the end, then she would face it standing up. And maybe, just maybe, something out there in the darkness would hear their call. 6 weeks had passed since Dr. Marcus Chen found the ancient chamber on Kethros IV. 6 weeks of desperate research, sleepless nights, and growing fear. The symbols on the chamber wall contained more information than Marcus had first realized. Each day brought new translations. Each translation brought new questions. And slowly, a picture began to form. A picture of beings so old and so powerful that human words could barely describe them. The architects. Marcus sat in his small laboratory aboard the UES Defiance, surrounded by holographic displays and scattered papers. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. His hands shook from too much coffee. But he could not stop working. Every hour he wasted was an hour closer to humanity's extinction. The texts describe a ritual, he said to the small group gathered around him. Admiral Tanaka stood with her arms crossed, listening carefully. Counselor Okonkwo had traveled from Earth to hear his findings in person, and there was one other person in the room. A woman Marcus had not met before. She stood in the corner, watching him with cold eyes. She was tall and muscular, with short black hair and a scar that ran down the left side of her face. She wore the uniform of the United Earth Marines, with enough medals to show she had seen many battles. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez," Admiral Tanaka said. "She will be leading the mission." Marcus nodded to her, but Vasquez did not respond. She simply stared at him with an expression that was hard to read. It might have been anger, it might have been grief, or it might have been something else entirely. "The ritual," Marcus continued, "is called the Call Across the Threshold. According to the texts, the architects created life throughout the universe billions of years ago. Then they left. They went somewhere else, somewhere beyond our understanding of space and time. Why did they leave?" Counselor Okonkwo asked. "I don't know. The texts don't say. But they left behind a way to reach them. A way to call them back if we ever needed their help." Marcus activated a holographic display showing a star map. 7 points glowed on the map, scattered across different parts of the galaxy. "The call requires these," he said. "The texts call them resonance crystals. They are devices that can amplify mental energy and transmit it across dimensions. There are 7 of them, hidden on 7 different worlds. Mental energy." Admiral Tanaka raised an eyebrow. "You mean thoughts?" "More than that. The crystals can take the focused consciousness of millions of minds and combine them into a single signal. A signal strong enough to reach the architects wherever they are." Commander Vasquez finally spoke. Her voice was rough and low. "And you believe this will work? You believe that if we find these crystals and think hard enough, ancient gods will appear and save us?" Marcus heard the doubt in her voice. He understood it. A month ago, he would have felt the same way. "I believe the evidence supports this theory," he said carefully. "I cannot guarantee anything, but I can tell you this. The Vectari believe it. Their communications have gone crazy since we found the chamber. They are terrified. They have legends about the architects, legends that say the architects could unmake their entire species with a thought. If the bugs are scared," Admiral Tanaka said, "that's good enough for me." Marcus pointed at the 7 glowing dots on the map. "We have already located 5 of the crystals based on the texts. 2 are on worlds we still control. 3 are on neutral worlds that the Vectari haven't reached yet. But the 6th crystal is on a world called Kepler 442b. He paused. The room grew colder. Kepler 442b was a human colony. 12 million people lived there. 3 months ago the Vectari took it. They killed everyone. Now they are using it as a hive base." Commander Vasquez's jaw tightened. Marcus saw something flash in her eyes. Pain. Old, deep pain. "My family lived on Kepler 442b, she said quietly. "My husband. My daughter. I was on deployment when the Vectari came. I could not get back in time." No one spoke. The silence was heavy with shared grief. "I am sorry," Marcus said. "I did not know." "It doesn't matter." Vasquez's voice was flat, empty. "What matters is the mission. If the crystal is there, I will get it. What about the seventh? Marcus hesitated. The seventh crystal is strange. According to the texts, it has been on Earth all along. It is buried beneath the Himalayan mountains. Ancient humans built temples above it thousands of years ago. They could sense its power, but they never understood what it was. So we need to dig it up, Admiral Tanaka said. Yes. I have already sent the coordinates to Earth. Teams are beginning the excavation now. Counselor Okonkwo stepped forward. Dr. Chen, you said the ritual requires millions of minds working together. How is that possible? How do we organize that many people? This was the part Marcus had been dreading. He took a deep breath. The crystals can connect to human consciousness directly. When they are activated, they will reach out to every human within range. Anyone who chooses to participate can join the call. But there is a risk. What kind of risk? Vasquez asked. The connection is intense. The human brain is not designed for this kind of contact. In my tests with small-scale models, about 10% of participants suffered severe neurological damage. Some died. The room went quiet again. You are saying, Counselor Okonkwo said slowly, that if we do this, millions of people could die just from participating in the ritual. Yes. And if we don't do it, billions will die when the Vectari reach Earth. Yes. The counselor closed her eyes. Marcus could see the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She was being asked to authorize something that could kill millions of her own people. But the alternative was the death of everyone. We will ask for volunteers, she said finally. Only volunteers. No one will be forced. 200 million people would be ideal, Marcus said. The more minds we have, the stronger the signal. 200 million volunteers to risk their lives for a chance to contact ancient gods who may or may not exist. Admiral Tanaka shook her head. I hope we can find that many people crazy enough to try. You will find them, Commander Vasquez said. Her voice was still cold, but there was something else in it now. Something like determination. People will volunteer because they have nothing left to lose. The Vectari have taken everything from us. Our homes, our families, our future. What is left except hope? She looked at Marcus with those hard, dark eyes. I will get your crystals, Doctor. All of them. Even the one on Kepler 442b. Even if I have to walk through hell to do it. Marcus believed her. Something in her voice left no room for doubt. Then we begin immediately, Admiral Tanaka said. Commander Vasquez, you will lead strike teams to recover the crystals. I will coordinate the fleet to give you cover. Dr. Chen, you will continue your research. We need to know everything possible about this ritual before we attempt it. Everyone nodded. The meeting was over. But as people began to leave, Counselor Okonkwo touched Marcus's arm. Dr. Chen, she said quietly. Do you truly believe this will work? Marcus thought about the question. He thought about the ancient symbols and the impossible message they contained. He thought about beings who existed before stars. I believe something left those crystals for us to find, he said. I believe something wanted us to have a chance. Whether that chance will be enough, I cannot say. The counselor nodded slowly. That will have to be enough. The mission to recover the crystals began 3 days later. Commander Vasquez stood in the cargo bay of the transport ship, Shadow's Edge, addressing her team. There were 50 soldiers in the bay, all of them volunteers. All of them veterans of the Vectari War. They had scars on their bodies and ghosts in their eyes. Listen up, Vasquez said. Our first target is the crystal on Novo Brasilia. The planet is still under human control, but Vectari scouts have been spotted in the system. We go in fast. We secure the crystal. We get out. Questions? A young soldier raised his hand. Commander, what exactly are these crystals? What do they do? They are our last hope, Vasquez said simply. That is all you need to know. The soldier nodded. No one asked any more questions. The mission to Novo Brasilia went smoothly. The crystal was hidden in an underwater cave near the planet's equator. Vasquez's team retrieved it in less than 6 hours. The Vectari scouts never even knew they were there. The second crystal was on a world called Sanctuary, a neutral trading post that had managed to avoid the war. The crystal was in the hands of a collector who refused to give it up. This artifact is priceless, the collector said. He was a fat man with golden rings on every finger. I will not simply hand it over to your military. Vasquez did not argue. She did not negotiate. She simply pulled her sidearm and pointed it at the collector's head. 2 billion humans have died in this war, she said calmly. I have watched children burn. I have seen worlds turn to ash. You can give me the crystal, or you can die and I will take it from your corpse. Choose. The collector gave her the crystal. The third and fourth crystals were recovered without major problems. But each mission took time, and time was running out. The Vektari fleet was advancing. Every day brought them closer to Earth, and every day, the casualties continued to mount. Back on the Defiance, Marcus received reports from across human space. The outer colonies were falling one by one. The Vektari showed no mercy. They did not take prisoners. They did not accept surrender. They simply killed until nothing was left. The death toll passed 3 billion, then 4 billion, then 5. Marcus worked faster. He translated more of the ancient texts. He learned more about the architects and the nature of the call, and the more he learned, the more he began to understand just how desperate their situation truly was. The architects are not gods, he told Admiral Tanaka one night. They are something else, something beyond gods. The text described them as beings of pure thought and energy. They existed in the first moments of the universe, before matter and space as we know them. They created the conditions for life to emerge. They seeded consciousness throughout the cosmos. Why? Tanaka asked. Why would they do that? The texts speak of a concept called the Great Experiment. The architects wanted to see what would happen when consciousness developed on its own. They wanted to see what kind of beings would emerge from the universe they helped create. And now? Where are they now? They withdrew to what the texts call the spaces between, dimensions that exist alongside ours but cannot be reached by normal means. They are watching us. They have always been watching us, but they will not interfere unless we call them. Tanaka frowned. That seems cold. If they created us, if they care about us, why would they let us suffer like this? Marcus had wondered the same thing. The answer he found in the texts was not comforting. The architects believed that consciousness must prove itself, he said. They seeded the universe with potential, but they did not want to control what that potential became. They wanted us to grow on our own, to struggle, to fail, or succeed by our own choices. The call is not a request for rescue. It is a statement of intent, a declaration that we are ready to take our place among the greater powers of the universe. And if we call and they decide we are not ready? Marcus had no answer for that. The fifth crystal was recovered from an abandoned research station in deep space. The station had been built centuries ago by a species called the Valderi, who had vanished long before humans reached the stars. The crystal was hidden in their most sacred chamber, surrounded by warnings in a language that took Marcus weeks to translate. Do not wake the sleepers, the warning said. Do not call the ones who came before. They will judge us and find us wanting. The Valderi had known about the architects. They had feared them so much that they chose extinction over calling for help. Marcus wondered if they had been right. 3 months into the mission, Commander Vasquez stood before her team again. This time, there were only 40 soldiers. 10 had died in various operations, but the ones who remained were harder than ever. The sixth crystal, Vasquez said. Kepler 442b. You all know what that world is now. The Vektari turned it into one of their main hive bases. They have millions of warriors there. They have orbital defenses. They have everything. She paused and looked at each of her soldiers in turn. I am not going to lie to you. This mission will probably kill us. The odds of survival are almost zero. But that crystal is essential. Without it, the call cannot be completed. Without it, humanity dies. She stood straight and tall, hiding the pain that burned inside her. I lost my family on that world. I have dreamed about going back there every night since they died. I have imagined what I would do to the Vektari, how I would make them suffer. Her voice cracked slightly. But that is not what this mission is about. This mission is about giving humanity a chance. A chance that my daughter will never have. A chance that billions of dead people will never have. So, she drew her knife and cut her palm. Blood dripped onto the deck. I swear on my blood and my grief that I will get that crystal. I swear I will bring it back even if I have to crawl through hell on my hands and knees. And I swear that the Vektari will learn what happens when they push humanity to the edge. One by one, her soldiers drew their own knives. One by one, they cut their palms and let their blood fall beside hers. No one spoke. No one needed to. The oath was made. The shadow's edge dropped out of hyperspace above Kepler 442b. The planet had once been green and beautiful. Now it was covered in the black organic structures of the Vectari hive. The cities were gone. The forests were gone. Everything that had been human was gone. Vasquez looked at the world through the viewing window. Somewhere down there, her husband and daughter had died. Somewhere down there, the crystal was waiting. Beginning descent, the pilot said. Enemy fighters incoming. Vasquez turned away from the window. There was no time for grief. There was no time for anything except the mission. Get us down, she said. No matter what it takes. The ship dove into the atmosphere, surrounded by fire and enemy weapons. Vasquez grabbed a handhold and held on as the world shook around her. She had made a promise. She intended to keep it, even if it cost her everything she had left. The shadow's edge crashed through the clouds of Kepler 442b, trailing smoke and fire. Commander Vasquez held tight to her seat as the ship screamed and shook. Around her, soldiers prayed or cursed or simply sat in silence, waiting for death. The pilot was a young woman named Torres. She flew with skill that bordered on madness, spinning and diving to avoid the endless stream of Vectari fighters. Enemy weapons exploded around them, lighting up the sky like a deadly fireworks show. Landing site in 30 seconds, Torres shouted. We're going to hit hard. Vasquez unstrapped herself and moved to the cargo ramp. Her soldiers followed without hesitation. They knew what was coming. They were ready. The ship hit the ground with enough force to throw everyone off their feet. Metal screamed. Sparks flew. The ramp blew open and daylight flooded in, along with the smell of something burning and something rotting. Move, Vasquez yelled. Move, move, move. 42 soldiers poured out of the broken ship and into hell. Kepler 442b had once been a paradise. Rolling hills, clear rivers, forests full of life. 12 million humans had called it home. Now it was a nightmare. The Vectari had covered everything with their organic structures, black and glistening like the inside of some massive insect. Towers of twisted flesh rose from the ground. Rivers had been replaced by channels of dark fluid that moved with horrible purpose. And everywhere, there were Vectari warriors. They came from the towers and the ground and the sky. They were insects the size of men, with bladed limbs and armored bodies and compound eyes that showed no mercy. They made no sound except the clicking of their legs and the snapping of their jaws. Vasquez raised her rifle and fired. The first Vectari fell, then the second, then the third, all around her. Her soldiers did the same, filling the air with weapons fire. The crystal is 2 kilometers east, Vasquez shouted. Push forward. They pushed. It was not a march. It was not even a fight. It was a desperate struggle for every step. The Vectari came in waves that never ended. For every one that fell, 2 more took its place. Vasquez lost count of how many she killed. She lost count of how many times she nearly died. A blade sliced her arm. A claw raked her back. She kept fighting. Behind her, soldiers began to fall. Private Williams was the first, torn apart by 3 warriors that hit him at once. Then Corporal Martinez, dragged down into the organic mass beneath their feet. Then others, too fast to count. Keep moving, Vasquez screamed. Do not stop. A young engineer named Kira ran beside her, carrying a backpack full of equipment. She was small and thin, barely old enough to have finished training, but she ran with determination that Vasquez respected. Commander, Kira pointed ahead. I see it. There, rising from the center of a ruined human city, was a tower of pure crystal. It glowed with soft blue light, even through the Vectari structures that had grown around it. The aliens had tried to cover it, tried to hide it, but they could not extinguish its light. The 6th crystal, the key to humanity's survival. Final push, Vasquez ordered. Everyone, give me everything you have. Her remaining soldiers charged with her. They had started with 42. She could see only 15 still standing, then 12, then 9. The Vectari were everywhere. They knew what the humans wanted. They knew how important the crystal was. They threw everything they had at stopping them. Vasquez killed until her rifle overheated. Then she drew her pistol and killed more. When the pistol ran empty, she drew her knife. A Vectari warrior leaped at her, blades slashing. She ducked under its attack and buried her knife in what passed for its throat. Black blood sprayed across her face. And then, somehow, they were at the crystal. Kira rushed forward with her equipment. Her hands were shaking, but she worked with desperate speed. I need 2 minutes to disconnect it from the Vectari structures. You have 30 seconds. Vasquez looked back at the swarm closing in on them. Make it work. 7 soldiers left. They formed a circle around Kira, firing in all directions. One by one, they fell. 6, 5, 4. Almost there, Kira screamed. 3 soldiers left. 2. Then only Vasquez and 1 other, a scarred veteran named Jackson. Got it. Kira pulled the crystal free. It was smaller than Vasquez expected, about the size of her fist, but it pulsed with light that seemed to come from somewhere far away. Run. Vasquez grabbed Kira and pushed her toward the extraction point. Jackson, cover us. Jackson nodded once. He did not say goodbye. He simply turned to face the swarm with a smile on his weathered face. He raised his weapon and began firing. Vasquez did not look back. She could not afford to. She ran with Kira through the nightmare landscape of Kepler, 442b. Behind them, the sounds of Jackson's weapon fell silent. Behind them, the Vectari horde pursued with relentless hunger. They reached the extraction point as a rescue shuttle dropped from the sky. The pilot was Torres, somehow still alive, having pulled the Shadow's edge into orbit despite all its damage. Get in! Torres screamed from the cockpit. Vasquez pushed Kira up the ramp and dove in after her. The shuttle lifted off before the ramp even closed. Vectari leaped at them from all directions. But Torres was too fast. She punched the engines and the shuttle rocketed toward space. Vasquez lay on the deck, gasping for breath. She was covered in blood, some of it hers, most of it not. Her body screamed with pain from a dozen wounds. But in her hand, she held the crystal. Commander, Kira said weakly. She was injured too, a deep cut on her leg that was bleeding badly. We did it. Vasquez looked at the crystal. She thought about the 41 soldiers who had died to get it. She thought about her family, somewhere down on that cursed planet, buried under the Vectari hive. Not yet, she said. But we are closer. She closed her eyes and let exhaustion take her. On Earth, the excavation beneath the Himalayas had finally broken through. Dr. Marcus Chen stood at the edge of an underground cavern so vast it seemed impossible. The crystal was here, just as the ancient texts had promised. But it was not alone. The cavern was filled with paintings, ancient paintings that showed beings of light descending from the sky, humans kneeling before them in worship, and one image that was larger than all the others, painted on the ceiling of the cavern itself. It showed a hand reaching out from darkness, a human hand, and above it, a shape that was difficult to understand. It might have been a face, it might have been a star, it might have been something else entirely. They knew, Marcus whispered. The ancient humans knew about the architects. His assistant Sarah stood beside him, staring up at the paintings with wonder and fear. Dr. Chen, look at the date marks. These paintings are over 12,000 years old. That is before any human civilization we know of. Before our recorded history, Marcus agreed, but not before humanity itself. We have been here for much longer than we remember. And apparently, we have met the architects before. He approached the crystal. It was identical to the others, a glowing blue gem that pulsed with inner light. But there was something different about this one, something more powerful. When he touched it, words filled his mind. You have come back to us. We have waited so long. Marcus pulled his hand away quickly. His heart was racing. Dr. Chen? Sarah looked worried. What happened? They are still connected, he said slowly. The architects. They are watching through these crystals. They have been watching us for thousands of years. He thought about what this meant. The architects had not abandoned humanity. They had been waiting for humans to evolve enough to use the crystals, waiting for humanity to prove itself worthy, or perhaps, waiting for humanity to need them badly enough to call. 3 weeks later, all 7 crystals were assembled in orbit, above Earth. Admiral Tanaka had gathered what remained of the human fleet, 23 warships. It was not much, but it was everything they had. Commander Vasquez had recovered from her wounds. She stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the crystals being positioned in a precise formation designed by Dr. Chen. Each crystal glowed with that strange blue light, and together they created patterns that hurt to look at directly. How many volunteers? Vasquez asked. 237 million, Dr. Chen replied. He stood beside her, looking exhausted but determined. People from every colony, every station, every ship that can receive our signal. They will all join the call. And how many will die? Marcus hesitated. Based on my calculations, 20 to 30 million. The psychic strain is immense. Vasquez thought about the number. 20 million deaths. It was terrible. It was monstrous. But the alternative was 7 billion deaths. When the Vectari reached Earth, they know the risks? She asked. They know. They volunteered anyway. Counselor Okonkwo joined them on the bridge. She had aged years in the past few months. The weight of leadership during the apocalypse had worn her down to bone and will. The ritual is ready, she said. Dr. Chen, explain what will happen. Marcus activated a holographic display showing the 7 crystals and the network of signals connecting them. When we activate the crystals, they will reach out to every human consciousness within range. Anyone who opens their mind to the connection will become part of a collective signal. 200 million minds, thinking as one. Thinking what? Admiral Tanaka asked. That is the question, Marcus admitted. The texts are not specific. They simply say that the call must be genuine. It must come from true need, true desperation. It must be a cry from the soul of our entire species. We have plenty of desperation, Vasquez said darkly. Yes, but I believe it needs more than that. It needs hope. The architects are not coming to save helpless victims. They are coming to witness beings who refuse to give up, who fight against impossible odds because they believe in something greater than themselves. Silence fell over the bridge. Everyone thought about what they had lost. Everyone thought about what they were fighting for. Admiral Tanaka broke the silence. When do we begin? Before Marcus could answer, alarm klaxons began to wail. Contact, shouted the tactical officer. Vectari fleet dropping out of hyperspace. I count. Oh no. I count over 15,000 ships. Everyone turned to the main display. The space above Earth was filling with Vectari vessels. They came in waves, endless waves, blotting out the stars. They know what we are planning, Tanaka said grimly. They are here to stop us. The Vectari fleet began to form into attack patterns. At the center of the swarm was a ship larger than all the others, a massive vessel that pulsed with the same darkness as the hive itself. The Hive Queen, Marcus said quietly. She has come personally, the Hive Queen, the central consciousness of the entire Vectari species. Every warrior, every ship, every conquered world was connected to her mind. She controlled billions of aliens with her thoughts. She had never lost a battle. She had exterminated dozens of species, and she was afraid. Marcus could feel it somehow, through his connection to the crystals. The Hive Queen was terrified of what the humans were about to do. She had heard legends of the architects passed down through millions of years of Vectari history. She knew that if the architects returned, everything her species had built would be destroyed. She will throw everything at us, Marcus said. She would rather die than let us complete the call. Admiral Tanaka straightened her shoulders. Then we give her a fight. All ships form defensive perimeter around the crystals. We protect them at all costs. 23 ships against 15,000. The math was impossible. The outcome was certain, but they moved into position anyway. Begin the ritual, Tanaka ordered. Do it now, while we still can. Marcus closed his eyes and reached out to the crystals with his mind. The connection opened instantly, flooding his consciousness with light and noise. He could feel them. All of them. 200 million humans spread across the galaxy, all waiting, all hoping. He spoke to them through the connection. His voice appeared in every mind at once. This is Dr. Marcus Chen. The time has come. We are reaching out to beings who existed before the stars. We are calling for help in our darkest hour. But I want you to understand something. This is not a plea for rescue. This is a declaration, a statement of who we are and what we believe. He paused, gathering his thoughts. We are humanity. We are young and small and fragile. We have made countless mistakes. We have hurt each other and our world. But we have also loved. We have created beauty. We have wondered at the stars and dreamed of touching them. We have refused to accept that anything is impossible. Around him, the battle was beginning. Weapons fire lit up the space between the fleets. Ships exploded and died. The Vectari think we are vermin to be exterminated. But we are more than that. We are the children of Earth. We are scientists and artists, soldiers and dreamers. We are billions of individual minds, each one unique, each one precious. More ships were dying. Admiral Tanaka was shouting orders. Commander Vasquez was running to a shuttle, preparing to launch and join the fight. We call to the architects not because we are weak, but because we refuse to give up. We call because we believe that life is worth fighting for. We call because, even in our darkest hour, we still have hope. Marcus opened his eyes. The 7 crystals were blazing with light so bright it was almost blinding. "Help us," he whispered, and 200 million voices joined his. "Help us." The cry echoed across dimensions that had never been touched by human thought, and somewhere in the darkness between realities, something ancient began to stir. The universe held its breath. In the space above Earth, the battle raged with terrible fury. Admiral Tanaka's fleet of 23 ships fought against 15,000 Vectari vessels. It was not a battle. It was a massacre. Human ships were being destroyed one by one, their crews dying in fire and silence. But they did not retreat. They could not retreat. Behind them, the 7 crystals blazed with light that seemed to come from another dimension entirely. 200 million humans across the galaxy had opened their minds to the call. Their combined consciousness flowed through the crystals like a river of desperate hope, and the universe began to change. It started slowly. Space itself seemed to ripple, like the surface of a pond disturbed by something massive moving beneath. The stars flickered and dimmed. The darkness between them deepened into something more than absence of light. It became presence. It became attention. The Hive Queen felt it first. She screamed through the collective consciousness of her entire species, a sound that no human could hear, but every Vectari warrior experienced as pure terror. The legends were true. The nightmares were real. The sleepers were waking. On the bridge of the Defiance, Marcus Chen fell to his knees as visions flooded his mind. He saw the birth of the universe, the first explosion of light and matter. He saw the architects moving through the chaos like thoughts through a dream, shaping and guiding and creating. He saw them planting the seeds of life on countless worlds, then retreating to watch from dimensions that existed alongside reality but never touched it. And he saw them turning their attention toward Earth, toward humanity, toward the desperate cry that had echoed across the threshold between worlds. "They hear us," Marcus whispered. "They are coming." The battle above Earth suddenly changed. The Vectari weapons stopped firing, not because the warriors chose to stop, but because the weapons simply ceased to function. Energy dissipated. Missiles went dark. Every piece of technology in the alien fleet began to fail. Admiral Tanaka stared at her tactical display in disbelief. "What is happening?" "I don't know," her tactical officer replied. His voice was shaking. "But look at this." He pointed at a section of space between Earth and the Sun. Something was emerging there, something that defied comprehension. It did not look like a ship. It did not look like a creature. It did not look like anything that human eyes were designed to see. It was a shape made of mathematics and light, a being that existed in more dimensions than 3. When humans looked at it, their brains translated what they saw into something they could process. But even that translation was overwhelming. The architect was larger than planets. It moved without moving. It existed without quite existing. And it spoke without making a sound. Words appeared in every mind in the solar system, human and Vectari alike. "We have heard your call, children of Earth." Marcus stood slowly, tears streaming down his face. The connection to the crystal network was still open, and through it he could feel the reactions of 200 million people. Fear, wonder, hope, disbelief. And something else. Something he had not expected. The architects were not speaking only to humans. They were speaking to everyone. "We remember when your species first emerged on the 3rd world of your small star. We watched you crawl from the waters. We watched you learn to walk, to think, to dream. You were one of many experiments in consciousness, one of many seeds we planted across the universe." The voice paused. The being seemed to turn its impossible attention toward the frozen Vectari fleet. "We also remember the ones who call themselves Vectari. We did not create them. They emerged from another part of the cosmos, driven by a different purpose. They chose to destroy rather than create. They chose fear over wonder. They have exterminated hundreds of species that we seeded with the potential for greatness." In the center of the Vectari fleet, the Hive Queen's ship began to shake. The Queen herself was experiencing something her species had never felt before. Individual consciousness. The presence of the architect had severed the hive link, cutting each Vectari warrior off from the collective mind. For the first time in their existence, the Vectari were alone. We could unmake them now. We could erase every trace of their species from the universe. They have earned such a fate. Silence fell across all consciousness. Humans and Vectari alike waited for the judgment, but we did not wake to bring destruction. Destruction is easy. It is creation that requires strength. The architect turned its attention back to Earth, back to the crystals, back to the network of human minds still connected to the call. You called us, children of Earth. You reached across the threshold between dimensions with a cry that we have waited billions of years to hear. Not a cry of weakness, not a plea for salvation, but a declaration of defiance. We seeded your species with something special, something that we ourselves do not fully possess. We called it the fire of opposition, the refusal to accept the impossible, the will to fight against entropy itself. You have proven that this seed has grown. You have faced extinction and refused to surrender. You have sacrificed yourselves for those you will never meet. You have hoped when hope seemed foolish. The being seemed to smile, though it had no face, no mouth, nothing that should have been capable of expression. This pleases us. Admiral Tanaka finally found her voice. She spoke aloud, knowing somehow that the architect would hear. We called you for help against the Vectari. Will you destroy them? Will you end this war? We will give you a choice. Admiral Yuki Tanaka, we can end the Vectari now. We can unmake them so completely that nothing of their existence will remain. The war will be over. Your species will be safe. And if we don't choose that, then we will give you knowledge, understanding, tools that will advance your species by 10,000 years. You will have the power to face the Vectari yourselves. The war will continue, but on your terms. The choice is yours. Marcus stepped forward before Tanaka could respond. Why give us a choice at all? You could end this yourself. You could wipe out the Vectari, and we would be grateful. We could. But that is not why we created you. We did not seed consciousness throughout the universe to create species that need to be saved. We created you to become something greater, to face challenges, to grow, to eventually stand beside us as equals. If we destroy the Vectari for you, we rob you of the chance to prove your own strength. We turn you from participants in your own fate into spectators. Some species have called us and asked us to solve their problems. We always refused. They either solved their problems themselves or they perished. This is the way of growth. But your call was different. You did not ask us to fight your battles. You asked us to witness your defiance. You called not from weakness, but from a refusal to die quietly. This is why we offer the choice. You have earned it. Commander Vasquez had been listening from her shuttle, floating in space among the wreckage of destroyed ships. She had been prepared to die. She had been prepared to sacrifice everything to protect the crystals. Now she activated her comm and spoke to the architect directly. I lost my family to the Vectari. My husband, my daughter. They died screaming while I was light years away, unable to help. I have dreamed every night of watching every single Vectari burn. Her voice cracked, but she continued. But my daughter would not want that. She was 7 years old, and she believed that people could be better. She believed that kindness was stronger than cruelty. If I choose genocide, I betray everything she was. Vasquez paused, her hand gripping her ship's controls until her knuckles went white. We don't want you to destroy them for us. Give us the knowledge. Give us the tools. Let us finish this war ourselves. And let us do it in a way that my daughter would have been proud of. Silence stretched across the void. Elena Vasquez, we have watched you. We have seen your grief, and your rage, and your terrible strength. We have seen how you refused to break, even when everything was taken from you. Your choice honors your species. It honors your daughter. So be it. The architect began to glow with light that seemed to have no source. Information flooded into the crystal network, and threw it into every connected human mind. It was overwhelming. It was painful. It was beautiful. Marcus fell to his knees as knowledge filled his consciousness. He saw how to bend space, how to create energy from nothing, how to build ships that could cross the galaxy in hours instead of years. He saw weapons that made nuclear bombs look like toys. He saw shields that could stop anything. He saw technology so advanced it seemed like magic. But more than technology, He saw understanding. He saw how consciousness worked, how different species could communicate despite having nothing in common, how peace could be built between former enemies, and he saw why the architects had created humanity. The universe was dying. Slowly, across timescales that made stars seem like candle flames, entropy was winning. Chaos was consuming order. Eventually, all energy would be exhausted, all matter would decay. The universe would become an infinite void of nothing. The architects were trying to stop it. They were trying to create consciousness that could fight back against entropy itself, that could bring new order from chaos, that could keep the universe alive. Humanity was one of their experiments, one of billions. But the call had proven something important. Humans were willing to fight impossible odds. Humans refused to accept that anything was inevitable. This is why we planted the seed of defiance in your ancestors. This is why we waited so long for your call. You are not just another species. You are a test of whether consciousness can truly oppose entropy. You have passed the first test. Now the real work begins. The download of knowledge ended as suddenly as it began. Across human space, people collapsed from exhaustion, their minds struggling to process what they had received. The casualties were heavy. 31 million people had died from the psychic strain. Their minds simply could not handle the connection. They had sacrificed themselves so that others could receive the gift. But the survivors now knew things that would have taken centuries to discover on their own. Admiral Tanaka straightened in her command chair. Her mind was reeling from the information she had received, but she forced herself to focus. The Vectari fleet is still out there, she said. What do we do now? Before anyone could answer, the Hive Queen's voice broadcast across all frequencies. It was the first time a Vectari had ever communicated directly with humans. What have you done to us? The voice was strange, almost broken. We cannot feel the hive. We cannot feel each other. We are alone. We are all alone. Marcus activated his own comm. The architects have severed your connection to the collective mind. You are individuals now. Each of you thinks for yourself. This is horror. This is torture. We would rather die than exist like this. Then you understand how we feel, Marcus replied. Humans are always alone in our minds. We cannot share consciousness the way you do. But we have found ways to connect despite that. We have found love. We have found friendship. We have found meaning in our individual existence. The Hive Queen was silent for a long moment. You could destroy us now. Your weapons would work. Ours do not. We are helpless. Yes, Marcus agreed. We could. But that is not who we want to be. Then what do you want? Marcus looked at Vasquez, at Tanaka, at Okonkwo, who had joined them on the bridge. They all nodded. We want the war to end, he said. We want you to leave our space. We want you to never attack another human world. In exchange, we will not destroy you. And if we refuse, then we will use the weapons the architects gave us. But I hope you will not refuse. I hope that now you understand what it means to be alone. You will also understand why we fought so hard, why we refused to die. The silence stretched on. Every human in the solar system waited, holding their breath. Finally, the Hive Queen spoke again. We need time. Time to understand what we have become. Time to learn how to be individuals. Then take time, Marcus said. Go back to your space. Figure out who you are. And when you are ready, perhaps we can talk. Perhaps we can find a way to coexist. You would trust us? After everything we have done? No, Marcus admitted. But I would give you the chance to earn trust. That is what hope means. Another long silence. We will withdraw. For now. But know this. Human. The architects have changed us, but they have not destroyed what we are. We will remember this day. We will remember what you did to us. I hope you do, Marcus replied. I hope you remember that when you were helpless, we showed mercy. I hope that memory shapes what you become. The Vectari fleet began to move. Slowly, painfully, they turned away from Earth and began their long retreat into the darkness between stars. Admiral Tanaka watched them go with mixed emotions. Relief, suspicion, and something that might have been hope. Do you think they will keep their word? She asked Marcus. I don't know, he admitted. But I think we have given them something they never had before. A choice. And choices have a way of changing people. Above them, The architect began to fade back into the dimension it had come from. But before it left, it spoke one final time. You have chosen well. Children of Earth, you have chosen mercy over vengeance, hope over fear. This is the path to greatness. But know this, you are not alone in the universe. There are others like you, species that we seeded with the fire of defiance, species that face their own impossible challenges. One day, you will find them, and together, you will do things that even we cannot imagine. Until then, remember, the universe is not dying, not as long as beings like you refuse to accept death. Farewell, children of Earth. We will be watching. The architect vanished. The crystals went dark. The connection that had linked 200 million minds faded away, and humanity stood alone once more. But they were different now. Changed. They had faced extinction and survived. They had called out to the oldest beings in the universe and been heard. They had been given knowledge that would transform their species forever, and they had proven something important. Not just to the architects, not just to the Vecthari, they had proven it to themselves. Commander Vasquez looked out at the stars through her shuttle window. Somewhere out there, her family was buried under the ruins of a Vecthari hive. She would never see them again. She would never hold her daughter or kiss her husband, but she had kept her promise. She had finished the mission, and she had done it in a way that honored their memory. I hope you saw that, she whispered to the stars. I hope you're proud. The universe did not answer. But somehow, Elena Vasquez felt that someone was listening. 1 year after the architects answered humanity's call, the universe was a very different place. The knowledge that had flooded into human minds took time to understand. It was like giving a child a library filled with every book ever written and asking them to read it all at once. The information was there, but making sense of it required patience and effort. Dr. Marcus Chen led the team that worked on translating the architect knowledge into practical applications. He had spent 12 months barely sleeping, barely eating, driven by a desperate need to understand what they had been given. And slowly, humanity began to change. The first breakthrough was in energy production. The architects had shown them how to tap into the vacuum energy of space itself, creating power from nothing. Within 6 months, every human colony had unlimited clean energy. Hunger and poverty began to disappear. The second breakthrough was in transportation. The old hyperspace drives that had allowed humanity to spread across 17 star systems were slow and inefficient. The new drives, based on architect understanding of space-time, could cross the entire galaxy in weeks instead of years. The third breakthrough was in medicine. The architects had shown them how consciousness connected to biology. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries were cured overnight. The human lifespan doubled, then tripled. Death became a choice rather than an inevitability. But the most important changes were not technological, they were social. The call had connected 200 million humans in a way no one had experienced before. For a few brief moments, they had felt each other's hopes and fears, dreams and memories. They had understood, truly understood, that every human being was unique and valuable. That understanding did not fade when the connection ended. It spread. Wars between human factions stopped. Political divisions that had lasted centuries dissolved. People began to see each other not as enemies or strangers, but as family. Admiral Yuki Tanaka retired from military service 3 months after the architects departed. She had spent her entire adult life fighting wars, first against other humans, then against the Vecthari. She was tired of death, but retirement did not mean inactivity. She became the first ambassador to the Vecthari remnants. The aliens had retreated to their core systems, struggling to adapt to their new existence as individuals. Many had gone mad from the loneliness. Many had killed themselves, but some had survived. Some had begun to learn what it meant to be a person rather than a part. Tanaka traveled to their space aboard a ship that would have been impossible a year before. It could cross the distance in 3 days. When she arrived, she found something she had not expected. The Vecthari were building, not hive structures, not weapons. They were building monuments to the species they had exterminated, memorials to the billions of beings they had killed across countless worlds. Each monument contained the names and histories of the dead, preserved forever in crystal and light. The new Vecthari leader, a being that had once been part of the Hive Queen's consciousness, met Tanaka at the border of their space. "We remember what we did," the leader said. Its voice was still strange, still alien, but there was something different in it now, something like sadness. We cannot undo it. We cannot bring back the dead, but we can make sure they are not forgotten. Tanaka looked at the monuments stretching across the void. Each one was a testament to genocide. Each one was also a promise that such things would never happen again. Why? She asked. Why does it matter to you now when it didn't before? The Vectari was silent for a long moment. When we were part of the hive, we felt nothing for the species we destroyed. They were not us. They were not real. Only the collective mattered. Only the expansion of the hive. It turned its compound eyes toward the distant stars, but now we are alone. Now we understand what it means to be a single mind in an infinite universe, and we realize that every being we killed was like us. Every one of them was alone. Every one of them was scared. Every one of them wanted to live. The leader's voice cracked with something that might have been grief. We cannot live with what we have done, but we can try to become something better. We can try to honor the dead by building something worthy of the universe they left behind. Tanaka did not know what to say. She had hated the Vectari for so long. She had watched them kill her friends, destroy her fleet, threaten everything she loved. Part of her still wanted vengeance, but a larger part of her remembered what the architects had said. Remember, the universe is not dying, not as long as beings like you refuse to accept death. Then build, she said finally. Build something beautiful, and maybe someday we can build something together. It was not forgiveness. It was not friendship. But it was a beginning. Commander Elena Vasquez did not seek peace with the Vectari. She could not. The wounds were too deep, the losses too great. But she found a different kind of healing. 2 years after the architects departed, she returned to Kepler 442b. The planet was still scarred from the Vectari occupation. The hive structures were dead now, crumbling without the collective consciousness to maintain them. The cities were ruins. The forests were slowly growing back. Vasquez walked through what had once been the capital city. She had found the records that showed where her family had been when the attack came. She knew they had died here, in this place, on this street. She knelt on the broken concrete and let herself cry. She had not cried in 3 years, not since she learned they were dead. She had locked her grief away behind walls of duty and rage and determination. But now, finally, she could release it. Kira found her there an hour later. The young engineer had stayed with Vasquez through everything. She had become something like a daughter. Commander? Kira approached slowly. Are you all right? Vasquez wiped her eyes. I don't know. I thought coming here would give me closure, but all I feel is empty. Kira sat down beside her on the broken ground. Maybe closure isn't the right word. Maybe nothing closes a wound like this. Maybe it just becomes part of you. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No. It's just the truth. Kira looked around at the ruined city. But here's another truth. You saved billions of lives. You got the crystals. You made the call possible. Because of you, humanity still exists. I was just doing my job. No. You were doing something more than that. You were choosing to keep fighting when everything seemed hopeless. You were proving that one person's determination can change the course of history. Vasquez looked at her. You sound like Dr. Chen. He's been teaching me. Kira smiled slightly. He says that the architects seeded us with something called the fire of defiance, the refusal to accept the impossible. He says that's what makes humanity special. Do you believe that? Kira thought about it. I believe that we have a choice. We can give up when things get hard, or we can keep fighting. The architects just showed us what happens when we choose to fight. Vasquez stood up slowly. Her joints ached. She was getting older. The years of war and grief had worn her down in ways that even architect medicine could not fully heal. But she was still standing. She was still alive. And that meant she still had choices to make. I want to build something here, she said. A memorial for everyone who died on this world. Not just my family. Everyone. The Vectari are building memorials too, Kira pointed out. This one will be different. This one will be built by the species that refused to die. It will be a reminder of what we lost, but also what we saved. She looked up at the sky, where human ships now traveled freely thanks to architect technology. My daughter believed in kindness. She believed in second chances. She would have wanted me to build something beautiful out of all this pain. Vasquez walked toward the edge of the city, where the forests were returning. She could see green shoots pushing up through the black remains of the hive structures. Life was coming back. Life always came back. "Let's get to work," she said. And for the first time in years, there was something other than grief in her voice. There was hope. 20 years passed. Earth had become the capital of something new. Not an empire. Not a federation. Something without a name that combined the best aspects of every human society that had ever existed. A civilization built on the principles the architects had shown them. Growth, creativity, and the refusal to accept limitations. The population had exploded. With unlimited energy, instant transportation, and medical technology that bordered on immortality, humans were spreading across the galaxy at an unprecedented rate. Thousands of new colonies were founded, millions of new children were born, and humanity was not alone. They had found the others, the species that the architects had mentioned, seeded with the same fire of defiance. Some were similar to humans. Some were so alien that communication seemed impossible at first, but they all shared something fundamental. They had faced extinction and refused to accept it. The first Congress of Defiant Species met on a station orbiting Earth's sun. Representatives from 12 different civilizations gathered to discuss their shared future. Marcus Chen, now old but still brilliant, gave the opening address. "We come from different worlds," he said. "We evolved in different environments. We think in different ways. But we all share something that connects us more deeply than any physical similarity could." He looked around the room at beings of light and crystal and flesh and something that defied description. "We were all created by the architects as experiments. Tests to see if consciousness could truly oppose the dying of the universe. And we all passed that test. We all called out to the architects in our darkest hour and said, 'We will not go quietly.'" He paused, gathering his thoughts. "The architects gave us knowledge. They gave us understanding. But they did not give us our determination. That came from us, from our choices, from our refusal to accept that anything is impossible." He smiled, the wrinkles on his face deepening. "They called it the fire of defiance. I prefer a simpler word. Hope. Hope that tomorrow can be better than today. Hope that our children will inherit a universe worth living in. Hope that all our struggles and sacrifices mean something." He raised his hand toward the viewing window, where Earth hung in the darkness like a blue jewel. "That is what unites us. Not our similarities, not our shared creators, but our hope, our stubborn, irrational, unbreakable hope." The Congress was a success. The 12 species formed an alliance that would span the galaxy. They shared knowledge and resources. They helped each other grow, and together, they began the work that the architects had envisioned billions of years ago, fighting against entropy itself. On the anniversary of the day the architects answered humanity's call, a memorial ceremony was held on Earth. It took place at Geneva, where the United Council had once met to discuss the end of everything. Now that building was a museum. It contained the history of the HFY War, preserved so that future generations would never forget what humanity had endured and overcome. Commander Elena Vasquez, now 93 years old but still strong thanks to architect medicine, attended the ceremony. She stood before a wall containing the names of everyone who had died in the war. Billions of names, scrolling endlessly across a surface made of light. A child tugged at her sleeve. A little girl with dark hair and curious eyes. "Were you there?" the child asked. "When the architects came?" Vasquez knelt down, her old joints protesting. She looked at the child and saw the same wonder and innocence that her own daughter had once had. "I was there," she said. "I was part of the team that recovered the crystals. I was in space when the architect appeared." "Were you scared?" Vasquez thought about the question. She thought about the battle above New Geneva, the suicide mission to Kepler 442b, the moment when she thought humanity would end. "Every moment," she admitted. "But being scared isn't the same as giving up. That's what the architects saw in us. That's what made them answer our call." She pointed at the wall of names. "All these people were scared too. But they fought anyway. They sacrificed themselves so that we could have a future. So that you could have a future." The child looked at the names with new understanding. "Is that why we built this? So we remember them?" "Partly. But also so we remember ourselves. So we remember what we are capable of, when we refuse to give up." Vasquez stood and looked up at the sky. It was night, and the stars were visible. More stars than had ever been seen from Earth's surface before the pollution cleared. Among those stars, human ships traveled freely. Human colonies thrived. Human children were born on worlds that had never known intelligent life before. We didn't survive because we were saved, she said, more to herself than to the child. We survived because we refused to accept oblivion. And the universe itself took notice. The child tugged at her sleeve again. What do we do now? Vasquez smiled. It was a question that every generation asked. A question that would be asked for as long as humanity existed. Now we keep going. We keep growing. We keep hoping. And we make sure that the sacrifices of everyone on this wall were worth something. She took the child's hand and led her toward the exit, toward the world outside, toward a future that once seemed impossible. Behind them, the names continued to scroll across the wall. Billions of souls, remembered forever. Billions of people who had refused to die quietly. And above them all, written in letters of light, were the words that Dr. Marcus Chen had spoken during the call. We are humanity. We are the children of Earth. And we will not go gently into that good night. The ceremony ended. The visitors left. But the memorial remained, glowing softly in the darkness. A reminder. A promise. A declaration. The universe had tried to break humanity. It had sent the Vecthari to exterminate them. It had pushed them to the edge of extinction. It had tested them in every way possible. And humanity had answered with something the universe had not expected. Not just survival. Not just victory. Hope. The stars continued to shine. The ships continued to fly. And somewhere out there, in dimensions beyond human understanding, the architects continued to watch. They had planted a seed billions of years ago, and now they were watching it bloom. The story of humanity was not over. It was just beginning, and it would be a story worth telling.